the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast, exploring alternative investment opportunities available to the everyday investor. Here's your host, Ben Lakoff.
Hello and welcome to the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast. Today's interview is with Kyle Gordon on art NFTs. With Kyle's background in crypto, art, and entertainment, he is my go-to guy for insight on where the art NFT market is going. On this channel, we've talked quite a bit about different NFT categories, and by now you should be starting to see the breadth of what's possible here. But this one covers art in great detail. In this episode, we covered the art NFT market overall, curation tools and methods to uncover artists in the space, and what it takes for projects to launch a successful NFT project today. Kyle really appreciates great art, and it shows with his own art and the art that he collects. There are tremendous disconnects in this very inefficient nascent market, and it is a very interesting space for those interested investors. But it's always an added benefit that the pieces you're investing in and collecting could be aesthetically pleasing as well. All right, before you listen, please don't forget to like or subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening to YouTube, give it a little like, a thumbs up, and or subscribe to the podcast. Share it with somebody that you think would get value from it. These things all really help grow the channel, and I really, really appreciate it. All right, enjoy this episode with Kyle Gordon on all things art NFTs. Enjoy. Kyle, welcome to the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast. Excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Ben. Pumped to be here.
Dude, you're like one of these guys in the space who I've known for a long time. It seems like we see each other a lot, and I haven't had this opportunity to sit down and hear more about your background and what kind of gets you excited within the space. So for me and all of my listeners, let's start with a little bit more about your background, who you are, and how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Oh, man. Well, my background's a bit unconventional, I'd say, for most of the NFT degens. I'm actually like a full-time artist, and I did immersive production for the last 10 years. So I was the guy designing like the stages and animations and stuff for like people like deadmau5 and Kanye and a bunch of different people I've worked for over the years. Like I did a lot of touring as well with a lot of musicians and doing their creative direction and like running their live shows. And so when the pandemic hit, obviously my studio kind of got totally screwed over, but I pivoted a little bit and started looking into like virtual experiences. And I'd been in crypto since like 2017. I dabbled, like Blau and I used to like do arbitrage trading on like the sketchiest of exchanges like Coin and stuff, like many, many years ago. And there wasn't really anything for like creators, so to speak, back then. Like I remember Crypto Kitties coming out. I remember like the punks coming out, but there wasn't anything where I could just like upload my art. And like being like a motion graphics or a digital artist is like really tough because you either have to go the studio route or you like freelance and you're not sure when you're going to eat, and you often get paid like nothing with no credit. And so this time around, I was doing some research for like a freelance project I was like working on that had to do with like spatial mapping, like real world spaces where you could like go to like locations and like collect digital collectibles or art. And after reading through a lot of like reports through like Deloitte and like all these crazy like bank reports, like financial reports actually about like the art market, I stumbled upon NFTs, I think in like the summer of 2020. And at first I was like super skeptical. I remember looking at like Super Rare and I was like doing all this like research and like looking into like the different marketplaces, and like the sales were like, you know, $50. Like I think Ethereum was like $80-$90 at the time. And so I was like, okay, this is like great, but nothing to like, you know, that's going to save creators and like artists from like working for the man, basically. And then once the crypto market kind of took off, like those 1 ETH purchases started becoming extremely lucrative for a lot of these like digital artists, fine artists, whoever was like participating in these platforms. And so I kind of like took my time to jump in. I think I minted my first project in the fall of 2020 and like was like kind of watching as a collector from the sidelines. I wasn't really like a whale to begin with by any means. And yeah, I mean, after like meeting people, like connecting with people, like there's no substitute for like the people you meet and like putting time and energy into like marketing yourself, growing your brand, growing your art. I started doing well. Prof, who's in the crowd, actually is one of my collectors. And I have some other amazing collectors like Tyler Ward, Richard from Galaxy Interactive, some really amazing humans, not just from like a kindness standpoint, but also from a knowledge and like just being overall badasses. And yeah, one thing led to another. Like, obviously, the space kind of exploded after like the fall of 2020 going into 2021. And I was invited to participate as one of the artists for the Carbon, which was with Beeple and like Rafiq Anadol, G-Monk, like basically like six, seven other artists who were like my heroes that I somehow found myself in this charity auction on Nifty Gateway. And we raised like $6 million for the Open Earth Foundation. And that was like the climax of my NFT like art days, I would say back then. And then I basically started working on DoinGud. And I came in as a co-founder and trying to build tools for creators, trying to like stream money to social causes and like work on like a protocol essentially to like make the space a better place. Fast forward to now, it's been like a little over a year and I'm still making art. I'm still working with and it's been a crazy ride. Like I actually just got back from Coachella. I was debuting a piece of art I did with HP down there for their dome experience. And it was crazy. I think like the piece, I worked with like 7-8 other artists and our piece is like sold for I think 125K or something, which is like the highest one-of-one art piece that's ever sold on Solana. So that's like my background. I mean, Ben and I, I'm like degenning in like all of your groups as well, but we don't need to dive in too deep to like my collector degen activities because I keep them like kind of secret.
except for the groups in which we both run, sir.
Yeah.
Your true identity.
I think everyone knows I love fluffs.
That they do. Well, yeah, no, I think that's an amazing story and kind of path that you've taken through the market. Let's talk a bit about DoinGud for my listeners, who they are, what they do, and how it's kind of important to the space.
Absolutely. So DoinGud, essentially, it's like a forward-facing marketplace today, but really what we're building is an open protocol that basically facilitates on-chain donations. So basically our protocol is backed by a like validated and verified social impact aligning with causes around the world. I think we currently mostly work with causes in the US, not because we don't want to work with other international groups and like locations, but mostly just because like the laws and the jurisdictions and like the way money is handled from like a charitable standpoint is so different in different regions of the world. So basically we're like putting in a ton of time and energy into like figuring out like how do we work with causes around the world? How do we create this decentralized like registry of causes around the world? And how do we like make tools for creators that allow them to like focus on making their art and like tap into like not only their own community, but as essentially what we want to build is a community of communities that are kind of banded around their similar values, similar goals of creating impact in art. And that's like the grand vision. Like, so today it's like a marketplace. We have it. It's live. We're working on like an amazing campaign right now where every week through the end of July, we're basically educating and highlighting people about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And every week we have like an international community coming in and curating an exhibition of amazing art and basically teaching people about like a specific sustainable development goal each week.
Yeah, huge fan of what you're doing at DoinGud. And full disclosure, I'm an advisor, so also keeping a close eye on what's happening there. Big fan. Well, with your background as an artist and very much involved from the art side, I thought it'd be helpful for my listeners. We've done a bunch of podcasts lately in this series about NFTs covering gaming regulations, kind of all over the place, but focusing specifically on art. And can we zoom out and have an overview of the NFT market, like from a art and collectibles point of view. You're involved in a lot, so lay it out for me, an overview of the art and collectibles NFT market.
An overview would probably be that there's a lot and a lot of
It's so true.
Yeah, there's not only a lot, there's a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration, at least that I'm seeing amongst like peers and people. Like this space is very unforgiving. It's very fleeting. Its attention span is like that of a peanut. And so we're in this phase now where you have a lot of people who got in early, who are probably like some of the top creators in the space and most well-known. And then you have like a bunch of people who are also incredible and had amazing traction for like a period of time. And what happens, because this space is basically in the Web3 space, a lot of the art and collectibles is directly correlated to the market fluctuations, which is not necessarily something we see in the fine art or like other like asset markets, so to speak. Maybe if there was like a massive global economic downturn, a lot of markets would be hit. But if like the US dollar decreases in value, you know, art as a whole, or like the art market doesn't like take a total shit. You know, people, if anything, are trying to diversify into different asset classes. And the interesting, I'm not sure if it's a good thing, to be completely honest, but with NFTs, it's very correlated to fluctuations in the crypto market. And the crypto market is also tied to conditions happening in the world or global economies and stuff like that. So you have like a lot of artists who were selling work for X amount, you know, like let's just say like 10 ETH a pop, and now aren't selling anything. And there's a lot of frustration and a lot of confusion. And that's only made worse when you have like subpar NFT, PFP projects like that someone commissioned from Fiverr coming out and it looks like total shit and basically sells out completely, and the team walks away with the money. And so creators are really special humans who need lots of validation, lots of support. You know, when they create art, they're basically pouring their life and energy into their creations. And to have that validation and then have it kind of like rugged, like literally, is confusing for a lot of people and upsetting. And so this space isn't for the faint of heart, especially when it comes to creators. Even big creators, you know, go through like their hills and valleys. So it's tricky now. Like I think like there's becoming this kind of split where there's NFTs as art, and that's it. There's no roadmap, there's no utility. And then there's projects that are kind of art, but they're not really art. It's like artists making projects thinking it's art, but really you're basically promising utility, roadmaps, future stuff, you know, whatever, like metaverses. Everyone's building metaverses nowadays. You know, you release your character PFP, launch your metaverse, launch your token, everyone wins, everyone goes home like super. And so I think it's an interesting space right now because we're going to see a lot of people getting smarter with their money. I think even just in the last few months, like people have wised up to like the volume of projects coming out and how selective they are about where they put their money. You know, Moonbirds being a great example. You know, I would say like as of late, people haven't been super active with buying new projects, but Moonbirds, like, I mean, broke a shit ton of records and just crushed it because the team and, you know, because of what they were building and what was implied and promised. So it's a tough space to be in, I'd say, as a creator. But if you can like stay focused, like, and come up with like sustainable like income streams in the space. Like, you know, I think everyone can agree the 10 ETH sales and stuff were never going to last. They're not, and whatever we're doing now probably also isn't going to last. But if you can start figuring out how to build an audience, just like you would in the Web2 world, build a group of people who are loyal to your work, consistently support you, and like make your work accessible to like more people, I think that's going to keep creators kind of like focused and like in the game, dedicated, and like honestly happier when they're creating their work.
Yeah, that's great stuff there, and a lot of stuff. So I kind of want to double tap on or double click on, but just for my listeners, so Moonbirds, pixelated birds by Kevin Rose and Proof Collective, but these were sold at $6,000 or $7,000 a piece. There were 10,000 of them, so they raised 70 million dollars, say. Now, the minimum price of these things is around $65,000 each. So much for the appetite of buyers like tapering off, because this one just went bananas. And it is a bit of a higher beta play on the crypto market, highly correlated to swings in the crypto market in general. And you're right. I mean, you mentioned metaverse and games. These things take a lot of time, and a lot of these projects promising these things coming up very, very soon. It's just not going to happen. So there'll be a day of reckoning in the next 6 months to a year as people start to figure out that these things take a lot longer than they had originally thought. I'm curious, like, there's lots of froth in the space, but you seem to have a good idea of what has staying power. So for those upcoming NFT mints that are happening, what do they need, to air quote, make it, in your opinion?
That's a good question. So I think clarity is really important, especially for like an artist. If you're releasing a project that's just art and that's it, then you have plenty of platforms that make that very clear, and that there isn't some implied utility. You can gamify that and work it however you want to work it. Just be careful not to overpromise things that are completely out of your knowledge base and like capacity to do. If you are creating a PFP project or looking at PFP projects, I would say, PFP projects you're not really buying it for the art. Like, let's be real. Like, basically, PFP projects are startups, and you're basically investing in this chicken or this bird or this bunny, and basically betting on the fact that this bunny that has this company building behind the scenes is going to succeed and generate some sort of value for you, whether that's experiential value, human value, like monetary value. And so if you're investing in a startup, you absolutely need to make sure the team behind the startup is actually good and intelligent and has experience doing this sorts of things. And that's where it gets kind of scary with like the artists, because you have artists all of a sudden becoming startup founders, and there's no guarantee that they're going to succeed. And so when I'm looking at projects, like, there's a few things I look at. I look at, one, the art, and is the artist like well established, well known? What's their following like? Are they successfully bridging their Web 2 audience and their followers like into what they're building? Or are they kind of treating this NFT project as a totally separate thing? If they're treating it as a separate thing, that's a big red flag for me, because it feels like a hard deviation from their brand and their community, and probably not something they're going to stick to long term. Because if they're so quick to drop the community and pick up and do something else, like at the drop of a hat, and like not utilize that community, then that's a red flag for me. Then you have to look at the team. I personally am not a fan of investing in projects, not investing, speculating on projects that have non-docs teams or anonymous teams. Obviously, I understand people want to remain anonymous, but from a standpoint of like debating if someone's able to deliver on their promises, I feel a lot more comfortable with people who can talk about their previous experience, their successes, their failures, etc. I want to see all of that, just like you would in like a business pitch deck. If you got to like the slide with the founders and it was like photos of a bunch of monkeys and their name was like OX Fun Boy, you probably wouldn't be as inclined to like throw money at them. So that's like the second thing. And then the third thing is uniqueness. Supposedly everyone's building a metaverse or a game or launching a token and all these things. And like, at least for me, I'm kind of jaded from all of these things at this point. I actually think like most of these projects are probably not going to be able to deliver on their metaverse promise. and are probably going to end up integrating with another one or just like building 3D characters that are ready in Sandbox or something, which is cool. But you just have to understand that the value that you're getting from that is going to be far less than if they actually deliver on their roadmap and their promises. Not to mention collectors won't stick around if it feels like the project's failing or like not able to deliver on those promises. So I would say those are the three things. Like the new thing that I'm also looking at is narrative and someone's ability to storytell. What we don't see a lot of is like gaming professionals. I actually think Bored Elon talked about this in a podcast recently. But when you are building a game or like a play to earn game and all this stuff, you have people building these things that are like tech people and not necessarily people who have experience with world building, lore building, character building, and stuff like that. And there's so much that goes into that to captivate an audience's attention, just like a film. You know, like Coinbase is making a film. Cool. Who cares if they aren't able to actually make a like compelling narrative, write a compelling story, like work with people who are able to actually like deliver on what makes a film actually interesting and sucks you in and captivates you. So I would say that's like the new thing I'm looking at with projects.
Those are super, super helpful. And this, I think the breadth of these categories that you're looking at show to how hard it is to actually have one that takes off, right? Art, team, uniqueness, narrative, these are all very different, and you need a different skill set to really crush it on all of these. Very good stuff. With PFPs and animals, I mean, yeah, my wallet is a farmyard, graveyard at this point. But moving more into the art space, I mean, you really have a great way of keeping track of innovative artists in the space and what they're doing and what they're cooking up. For new people to the space that don't have a Kyle Gordon nudging them every time there's a drop that they should be reminded of, how can people find artists, or what curation tools will help them kind of sort through the noise here? They just need a Kyle.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a good question because there isn't really like a lot of sources that are just compiling all the things happening. What I've seen a lot of recently are these like curatorial groups that are popping up, whether they launch their own platform or they have a Discord group, and they're actually like acting as like NFT agencies and curators, so to speak, where, you know, you buy their NFT pass and then you get like access to their mints and stuff. So you have like really cool ones. This one's more of a marketplace, but legend.art. Like, I love the stuff they're doing. They work with some incredible artists. Not super like well known, I would say, yet, but they work with amazing artists, and the artwork is like next to none. They care a lot about the fine details. Another one I'm looking at recently is called Drip, DRP .io. It's another one where they basically have like drops curated with specific artists, and they basically like help bring them into the space, come up with cool mechanics, and have some sort of like I love the work that Pablo Frel is doing as well. Huge collector. He used to be a part of Mocha. He's working on a project called Aorist, built on Algorand. And it's just, you can tell the attention to detail when someone actually uses the technology as a medium, like kind of like what Pac does, rather than just like taking a photo of a painting and like minting it. You know, like all the drops that have been out on like Aorist have like had some sort of interesting mechanic, or there's like a custom work that's gone into it to make it feel like it's something unique, something different. So I think going with platforms that are like doing these like high-end curatorial bodies of work, there's a lot of them now. I would say that's a great place to start. I would also, I know it's like ridiculous, but most of like my best plays, best like artwork that I've discovered has actually been through Instagram or Twitter. I mean, I have like, I guess different from most people, I have like 10 years of following almost all of these big artists and watching their careers, watching their work. Like I was like literally downloading people's files in 2009 to learn how to like animate. So like, you can see who the legends are in this space. You can look at like motion graphics conferences and see who's speaking. You can like see who already has a presence in like the fine art world as like a digital creator. It could be fine artists as well. I just have a much more tendency to lean towards the digital artists because I just have more experience and like understand who actually is like someone with years and years of experience and is considered like a true legend in the space versus someone who is like relatively new and might not have that same sort of clout, at least amongst peers. So that's kind of how I do it. I use Pinterest a lot. I use Instagram to organize like people's work I like so I can find it. You know, you can look up hashtags and stuff on Instagram now, but it's probably noisy unless you find like very niche ones. But I would say if there's like an animated work that you're seeing on Instagram, odds are that artist is somehow involved in NFTs. And that's a great way to kind of like deep dive into like where they're selling their work or like how new they are.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I think this is a lot of the frustration, even for my friends, right? I have people that are like, hey, you've been in NFTs forever. How can I invest in NFTs? And there's no real good method other than rolling up your sleeves, sorting through the pile of rubble and rubbish and kind of hoping for the best and then easing into it that way. I'm curious, have you heard of Rara Social?
I haven't, but I'm ready for you to tell me about it.
Yeah, I'll share it with you. I mean, they aim to solve the curation problem. So it's like to earn, kind of paying curators in their currency, and you win if that piece that you've curated gains traction, sort of thing. So paying you if you curate well. So trying to solve this problem early on. Yeah, Lawson is doing some really, really cool stuff over there. A disclosure, I'm an investor and follow them closely, but they're friends of Charge Particles. Will happily introduce you. I'm sure there's some cool stuff that you could do there as well as with DoinGud.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sounds great.
Yeah. Oh, so talking about getting newbies into the space, what catalysts do you see in the space that might need to happen to really unleash like a whole new group of NFT investors and buyers into the market?
It's a tough question because I think you need an appetite for the space, whether that's like your hunger for like the value or your hunger to learn more. You know, I think that's how like all of us started originally. There weren't like a lot of guides or resources. It's kind of like trial and error. And I think the same is kind of true nowadays, even though it's significantly easier to get started. You know, a lot of people just want their hand to kind of be held, and that's like totally okay and fair. But if you don't have like an appetite to learn and like a hunger to really dive in, you're probably not going to be like able to like pull the value from the space that you're really looking for. So for like the next generation of people that are going to come into the space, I don't know if it's unfortunate or not unfortunate, but I think they're probably going to go with tools that are relatively centralized, that kind of like hold their hand, that are linked to their Facebook, their Google. You know, they sign in with traditional methods. All their data is collected by a centralized entity. And basically they can check out using Stripe or whatever like traditional payment methods they can. And now they have an NFT, which is cool, but there isn't a lot you can do with that, especially in like a centralized ecosystem. So it's really complicated. If you're not willing to learn and dive in, I don't think you're going to extract the same utility, because odds are then you're not going to be able to go into Discord and like verify your wallet with Collabland. Now you have access to like token gated information and like channels and all that kind of stuff. Like maybe you can plug your stuff into a Samsung frame or like a digital frame. But again, like the education is abundant in this space. I think from what I've seen, at least through my experience with DoinGud and like other platforms as well, I think our society and our culture is kind of used to like short attention span, like easy access, like simple. And blockchain technology is so complicated and probably years away still from being accessible to the point where everyone can just kind of like spin up a wallet with the snap of their fingers and like have money in there in like 10 minutes. I actually had a call earlier today with one of the large tech giants, and they were asking similar questions. They're like, how do we get people to like use NFTs and tap into NFTs. And I was like, honestly, probably for someone like you, makes sense to have like a custodial wallet system where people don't have to worry about what's under the hood and the blockchain and all that. I think there will be a huge divide in the space between the people that want the true decentralized Web3 kind of ethos. And then I for sure expect like the Metas, the Googles, the Apples, and everyone to kind of come up with their own sort of answers and solutions to like this craze. But I guess like the smart people will understand there's different value from a centralized system versus like a decentralized system. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts on that.
That makes sense. I'd be curious your thoughts on Coinbase. So this is being recorded on 4/20, April 20th, but big news today is Coinbase goes live in beta. I don't know anybody that got on the list. I'm pretty sure I signed up instantly and I'm not on the list yet, but what are your thoughts on Coinbase NFT entering the market?
To be completely honest, I took a peek today. I was not in the beta, but I took a peek at the site and everything. From what I saw, it seems like they're very behind other solutions that are just better already. Like, I think the strengths that Coinbase has is a lot of people onboard into the NFT space through Coinbase, or they have crypto through Coinbase. But then it just calls into question, okay, so if the barrier of entry is getting funds, and that's what sets Coinbase apart and like helps them like, be ready to go. How does Coinbase really fare much differently from like Nifty Gateway, who you just sign up with your email and you use your credit card? Like you don't need crypto through Nifty Gateway. So if the funds was Coinbase's leverage and like everyone has Coinbase, everyone onboards through Coinbase, it's going to expose so many more people to like investing in NFTs. I guess my question would be like, why do people need to like go through Coinbase when they can just go to most NFT marketplaces and just check out with a credit card by entering their email and a password? So yeah, so far, not super impressed. It seems pretty like par for the course compared to like a ton of other existing solutions that in my opinion are just a lot more advanced, have like a lot more experience already, like with trial and error, bug testing, and they will have an insane amount of stuff to work through for the next few months. So I guess it's to be determined whether like being the on-ramp also gives you success as an NFT marketplace. But so far with the other marketplaces or the exchanges that have done this, I don't think there's been a lot of traction or success. And I honestly think most of them will probably shut down their NFT marketplaces in the next few years. Just like I think in 2017, a lot of like marketplaces like spun up different projects like to capitalize on hype and momentum, and all of those also shut down.
Yeah, it's a focus thing, right? And if that's not your core business, but I think with Coinbase, I mean, Coinbase is where I send every beginner. It's like, you want to learn about crypto? Sign up to Coinbase. This is easy. Do the Coinbase earn a few things. They're publicly traded. You can trust their hot wallets, up to a certain amount. Don't murder me, blockchain purists. But so I like the idea of within that ecosystem, you can dabble into NFTs, but there's still that problem of curation, so all these NFTs listed there, you still have no idea what to buy or what a good price is. But it's a bit like the art market anyways. If you say you want to invest in art, there's no easy way to just one click, well, maybe Masterworks these days, but have a small piece of the art market. So we'll get there, but I'm cautiously optimistic about Coinbase NFT coming in. When you, I'm sure like me, you're known as the NFT guy with your friends, but I still inevitably have those friends that, air quotes, just don't get it with NFTs. They have no idea how this could have value. What have you found that you can say to them to get them over the line to understand that these NFTs do in fact have value and are here to stay?
Yeah, that's a good question. I forget exactly where I heard it originally. I think it was maybe Loopify or or some pretty well-known news source when I was first getting in. And basically the correlation was like the Mona Lisa example. I can go into the Louvre today, take a high-res photo of the Mona Lisa, print it out, put it on my wall, and that doesn't mean that I have like a multi-million-dollar thing on my wall. It's the authenticity. It's like someone authenticating or proving that the thing that you have has value. And I think that's fine art too. You even have institutions whose job is to like authenticate these things, and still you have counterfeits getting past them. So what really all of this is like an NFT is like a certificate of authenticity. If you're familiar with collecting sports memorabilia, you have Upper Deck, and you have like all those sorts of companies who authenticate like signatures of famous people and say, this is authentic. If you're collecting Pokemon cards, like, you buy the packs from like the official Pokemon card person that proves that they're like authentic cards. I think the same thing is kind of true with NFTs, except in this case, there isn't like a centralized body dictating whether something's authenticated. You actually can look at the provenance and like discern for yourself if the origin of this thing is in fact authentic, because you can trace the history of it. Did that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's not an easy answer, right? Which is this is part of it. And there's lots of people that don't see the value in art or collectibles anyways, and see it as a bit of a greater fool theory anyways. So some people just will never get it. And that's something you have to accept, I guess.
Sorry, there was just one thing I wanted to add on to that, because while we're talking about like the authenticity of it, I think like one of the things that's kind of scary that I think a lot of artists are wising up to in this space, but still it's like a problem, is cool. So everything's authenticated, everything's on chain. Cool. But like the blockchain itself isn't actually providing that authenticity. It's actually the trail and the wallet you mint from that provides the authenticity. So like when I first joined the space, I don't know about you, Ben, but I have like 15 different wallets.
I have so many dead ones.
Yeah. So many wallets, and like maybe they get compromised, like who knows what happens. And so when you're an artist, you have to have that redundancy and that consistency and very clearly mark your wallet as the minting wallet, because otherwise, like, how does anyone know whether it's truly your work? Not because it's from super rare, not because it's from whatever marketplace. You're not going to be able to validate it from a random smart contract spun up by a marketplace. It really boils down to the wallet. And so when we're thinking about like 10, 20, 50 years in the future, we don't know if these marketplaces are going to exist. We don't know if these third-party curators who are minting on behalf of artists are going to exist. So if I'm buying something 50 years from now as an NFT and I'm looking at the provenance, how am I supposed to know if I'm buying a Rafiq Anadol piece from Rafiq's wallet or whether it's from the Nifty Gateway Omnibus smart contract or something? That's how they used to do it. And that's scary because there's no difference between that at that point and like some random human who was impersonating this artist back then and set up a fake contract. And so like from like a safe practices standpoint, it's really important that artists practice consistency from the wallets they're minting from and mint to their own works and are not using like third-party contracts and stuff. Like there is a reason, like there's a big like hype and momentum around the custom contract movement. It's just another layer of authenticity that you can provide for your collectors.
That's a very, very good point that's not talked about enough in the space. This idea of provenance is one of the main value props, right? And if you're having a wallet compromised or lose a passphrase, these things happen. So very, very good that you brought that up. And so it's great segue here. Speaking of scary things in the space, we surround ourselves with crypto perma bulls constantly. Where could things go wrong? Like what keep you up at night in terms of NFTs being the next big thing besides that provenance wallet compromise aspect?
I'm gonna say the word or the acronym, and I know everyone's going to hate me for it because no one wants to talk about it because we're all going to make it and GM and we're all WAGMI and, you know, we're all everything. Everything's great. SEC. So yeah, it's tricky. Like the thing that worries me most about this space, especially the PFP projects, is, and especially a lot of these marketplace projects, there's securities like textbook securities. Like they all fail the Howey test. So there's like one of two things that are going to happen. Either history will repeat itself as it tends to do in the crypto market, where in a year or two, the SEC will basically go after like really high grossing projects and basically say you have to give the money back, just like they did in 2017 with the ICO boom. Like this has happened already and people have been pursued. People have been like come after by the government. Like it's happened. Like it's not like it wouldn't happen again. So it's very plausible because it's a free payday for them for a lot of these projects. I guess the other way is that maybe there's like legislature reform where maybe these things aren't seen as securities and maybe we just need to revise our laws. I think that's a lot less likely to happen. And while the money might be flowing today and everyone's sky high, I think like the major catalyst, one of the major catalysts I remember from 2017 that cratered the market was SEC investigations and actual like lawsuits coming out of that. And it's all timed like very strategically. It's like the press, the media, like everyone knows about it before it's coming, you know, like by the time you hear about it often, it's too late. Like you can literally go from like being up one day to down like 80% in like a 48 hours. You know, I'm sure if Ben, if you've been around for a while,
you know. PTSD from 2018 or 19, whenever that happened. That's for sure. Like actually, I've never seen assets that I own and care about go down by 95%. And it's not pleasant for anyone. But if you could, so I completely agree. But would you think that some more clarity on this or just, you know, 3-letter agencies coming in and clearing house? I mean, obviously this is good for the space longer term, but snap your fingers and have one of these things happen. What would be super helpful for the space, kind of as a longer term good catalyst for the space?
I would love to see more people in their project descriptions, roadmaps, teams talking about legal counsel who's working with them to like help guide their decisions and stuff. I know the answer is they don't exist in 90% of the projects, but I think it's important for people to be talking about these things. And it's comforting to people who are going to be supporting you as well. You know, especially people who may have no idea what's going on. I know no one wants to talk about this stuff because it's, you know, not, you know, we're not going to make it if we're talking about like, you know, what could go wrong. But I would love for people to talk more about like how we could help reform legislation. I loved the Lobby Lobsters project, like helping like raise funds to lobby for crypto and like better legislation when that was happening. Like, I think we just need to be like, you know, more unified in how we approach these sorts of conversations around like laws and securities and like frameworks and things like that, because we can help guide it. And I think we can make a difference. I mean, just the amount of money people are making from like birds and owls and chickens and whatever, like the money's there. I think people just either don't remember what it was like when they were all rugged, or they are waiting and like hopeful that it won't happen again. So yeah, I think, you know, education's important. I think transparency is really important. And I think people should be able to talk about it and talk about it in a way that's like very proactive. I know there's like an entire task force of lawyers that meet every week to talk about like IP and frameworks and like universal like guides for how we can handle like IP with regards to NFTs and stuff. I think it would be great if there were similar conversations on how project founders or artists, etc., can be mindful of how to like guide their project in a way that is compliant. Because I think, you know, we all want crypto to be mainstream and adopted and go global. You know, it's in our best interest for that to happen. And NFTs included. That's never, ever going to happen without compliance to some degree, you know? So I think it's important that we try to like shed more light on that stuff and like be more collaborative in that sense.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I mean, whenever I speak to founders on this, it's you have to have a minimum amount of risk you're willing to take within the space. But sometimes the problem is these laws are a little archaic, and they're tough to apply those laws to what's happening in the digital currency space in general. But that still doesn't mean you just throw your hands up and say, I don't understand, I don't comply. There's still like a level of compliance. But yeah, Wang Mai doesn't have the same chime to it as Wag Me. So you got to take that in out of there. All right, shifting back into something a little bit more fun than regulation ever is. Who is your favorite NFT artist right now and why?
It actually didn't take me a long time to think about it. So first off, like Beeple, I think is iconic, incredible. Like what he has contributed and his success in the space is like second to none. And he's incredible. Like he's awesome. But when it comes to leveraging like Web3 and NFTs as a medium of art, I don't think there's anyone coming anywhere close to what Pac is doing. And people can say what they want about his tokenomics, his whatever, that he doesn't care about his collectors and generating value for people. It's not even about that. Just from an artistic standpoint, that dude is on another level. Like it's actually crazy. Like just from like an artistic standpoint and just from like an engineering standpoint, what his team and whoever he's working with has been able to create for his projects is insane if you've played any of his games or tried to participate in any of his projects.
Yeah, I somehow knew you would say Pac. I was hoping for Rafiq, but Pac, I messaged you before this because you shared he has an upcoming drop. He's pushing the limits always with like what it means to collect art or interact with his art. And often, sometimes, for my monkey brain, it's not the most easy. You have to buy one thing to burn it to redeem it for a token that's also redeemable for something else. It's but I know that he's pushing the limits with what can be done with NFTs. Where would you recommend listeners to get more acquainted with somebody like Pac?
Well, I mean, there's actually an incredible piece done by Robin Schmidt. I'm just blanking on the name of his
Defiant, super massive
yes,
one.
The Defiant. Yes. Oh my gosh. Cannot believe it's been a long time.
No
I love that guy's work. He is also a genius in his storytelling, but he has a 3-part series about Pac that talks about everything from like his history to like his themes, his motifs, his art, his projects. I think it's a great introduction for anyone who wants to just dive into and learn about it in a very interesting sort of documentary style way. Highly recommend it.
I'll definitely link that in the show notes. I'm a big fan of Robin and all the videos he's doing, even though he did that massive piece on Bored Apes and how strong the community was. And I didn't just go out and buy 50 of them after watching it and realizing how good it was. I hold him personally accountable for that. So you monitor a lot of these artists, things in the space. What are you most obsessed with in the space right now from a art NFT perspective, and why?
Wow. Obsessed is a really strong word. I would say there's a few projects that I monitor like very close, and then there's a lot that I'm not following as closely, but kind of still hold on to. The ones that I'm like on top of like a hawk, I would say, is like the Fluff World ecosystem. That one was like the number one I was monitoring the closest. But as of late, I've also been really following the 10KTF ecosystem. Not sure how familiar you are with them, but I have very strong beliefs that they are closely tied to the Other Side Metaverse project by the Bored Apes group, if not working on it, to be completely honest. I think I have a feeling they're going to be very closely integrated with that project. If you don't know who 10KTF is or haven't heard of them, a good place to start would be going to check out We Knew Moment. It's basically a company called Possible Productions who's responsible for producing like the sickest live experiences of our lifetime, honestly. They do like all the League of Legends tournament hologram stuff. They worked for like Justin Bieber, Paul McCartney, like everyone, every major artist, like Lady Gaga. Like you imagine like a huge like performer, and they've done like immersive production for them. They also have been collaborating with Beeple for like 10 years. And so they basically started this project called We Knew Moments, where they did the NFT releases for like Wembley and Louis Vuitton, those types of people. And they now launched a project called 10KTF, which is basically their like community vampire PFP project of like sneakers and like digital apparel. But they're building this whole lore around it where they've kind of like brought in other communities like toads and meebits and apes and all these different things. Maybe not meebits yet, actually, but like the apes and like onis and all this stuff where basically you could mint a backpacker sneakers of your PFP. And now you're part of this like new Tokyo narrative where like toads are like mob bosses and stealing from like this Wagmi-san guy who's like the best craftsman in the world. And there's tokens, there's mystery, there's adventure. It's sick. And honestly, it's in my opinion, probably the strongest creative team like in the world. And I don't say that lightly. Also, Beeple is a co-founder of the project. So, you know, you put Beeple and this guy, Mike Figgy, who is like someone I consider a mentor. I actually interned with his company back in 2012. And then Guy Osiri with partnerships with Louis Vuitton, Gucci, like Warner Music Group, Universal Music Group. You can just kind of start connecting the dots. And yeah, I mean, they're doing insane stuff. I highly recommend looking at them.
So if you have a crypto, for instance, how do you tell if a backpack or whatever accessory has already been supported? And the website is 10kf.com. I'll link it in the show notes, but I'm
the number
live researching it right now.
.com.
Yeah. How do you tell if one has been minted or whatever already?
Yeah, so you can just go on OpenSea and then you can actually just search for your token ID based on the collection. So you can just go and, you know, if you have like Oni 1000, you can just go to like the 10KTF collection on OpenSea and just like select, like filter out Oni and then type in like 1000 and it'll show if it's been minted. If it has, then you obviously can't mint it. If it hasn't, you can mint it, but you should also know that you can't just mint them anymore. You actually have to buy materials and craft the blank in order to mint it, or you have to buy one of the blanks that are basically under a separate collection called 10KTF materials or something.
I love it. Super, super, super innovative and fun. All these things are more rabbit holes to explore. What is the most underappreciated artist right now and why? Or you can name a few if that's easier versus just one.
Oh, man. Honestly, it's really tough to say. I mean, I don't want to say something like cliche or like it's half-assed, but I would say 95% of the NFT space is undervalued and underappreciated because there are incredible artists from around the world who just aren't good marketers. And that's part of the game. Like they might not be social. They might be introverted. They might not have the same hustle as going out and networking and meeting people, supporting other artists. You know, another way to like get recognized as an artist is to like, you know, collect other people's art and like open up dialogues with them. Like not everyone has the same accessibility or like ability to like make it in a sense. And the community and the connection is such a huge part of this on top of the marketing. And artists aren't good at that. And so I hope as the space evolves that there's such a huge need for like agencies and marketers and curators and all these people who everyone was so gung-ho about cutting out completely at first. But at least in the conversations I have, everyone just wants marketing. Like when someone wants to do a drop on a platform, it's not because they can't just do their own drop. It's because they want to tap into someone else's community and leverage their audience. So I would say like lots of underappreciated artists, much more need for marketing, communication, and curator type folks. And yeah, I mean, It depends on what you're looking for. If you're just trying to be a patron of the arts in this space, definitely just go and collect art and like search for like cool stuff that you like. I'm not saying you're going to make a return on it, but I know the artist you're supporting is going to really be grateful for that. And then if you're looking for a return, probably stick to people that already have established themselves or doing really insane things that you're confident are going to establish them if they haven't been discovered yet.
Well, Kyle, this conversation has been fantastic. I've really, really enjoyed it. Where can my listeners find out more about you, DoinGud, wherever you would like to send them?
Yeah, of course. Likewise. I mean, it's always great talking to you, Ben. And I can't wait to see you again in person. You can find more about me on my Twitter, mostly Instagram. Kyle Gordon Art is my handle. If you want to find out more about DoinGud, we're DoinGud HQ, the letters HQ at the end on social media, or doinggud.com. If you want to learn more about what we're building or contribute in some capacity, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Really, really appreciate it, Kyle. And yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing you the next time IRL.
Likewise, Ben. Thanks again for having me. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
There you have it. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate your support. Show notes, transcript, links, and more can be found on our website at altassetallocation.com. If you'd be so kind, please share this with anyone you think might be interested or get some value from this conversation. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out. I'm always happy to hear them. Lastly, if you're on YouTube, please like the video or subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to the audio version of this, please subscribe to the podcast and or leave a review. This really helps more people find the podcast, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again, and hope you have a fantastic day. Happy investing. Happy investing. Happy investing. Happy investing. Happy investing. Happy investing.